Tom Wheeler, a 62-year-old widower with a beard like steel wool, shuffled to his mailbox in worn slippers, expecting a bill or junk mail, not a bomb. A thick, certified envelope from the HOA glared up at him, and inside a cold demand, $28,000 for back dues he'd never heard of. His knees buckled against the rusted mailbox, heart pounding. Retirement savings were thin, and now this? The house he'd built with Mary in '78, nail by nail, felt like it was crumbling in his hands. He saw her smile in the empty lot they'd tamed, heard her laugh over the buzz of saws, and now some paper-pushing vultures wanted to price that out of existence. Anger simmered beneath his shock. How could they hit him with this after 40 years? His eyes stung as the fine print swam, not from tears but from raw injustice. He'd been here before their lawns and rules, yet they demanded his blood money. The lesson seared into him as he trudged back, envelope tight in his fist. Don't dodge official mail, even if it looks like trash. Advice. Sit down with coffee, rip it open, and read every line. Knowing's your first wall against the wolves. Tom didn't sleep. The HO letter sprawled across the table where he and Mary once played gin rummy. A Polaroid on the fridge, him in flannel, her in a sundress, hammering their first nail in '78. Stared back, a relic of before the subdivision swallowed their peace. Could the HOA claim that past taxed their dreams? He remembered hauling lumber, her picking yellow paint for the walls, their late-night talks about a porch swing. Now, at 62, they wanted to steal it all. He touched the creaky floorboards, the home they'd poured their youth into, and felt a defiant spark. This wasn't just wood and nails. It was Mary, it was them before the suits and their clipboards came. The newcomers bowed to the HOA, but Tom. He was the original, the rebel who'd mowed his own way. The lesson hit hard as he gazed out the window she'd loved. Know your home story, because it's your shield against thieves and ties. Advice. Dig up the deed, ask old neighbors, trace the years. What you uncover might lock out the greedy. Tom's hands shook as he dialed the HOA, the letter a live wire in his grip. He'd rehearsed, calm, steady, but the rep cut him off, voice icy. Everyone pays, sir. Pay or lose it. He tried to explain. His lot was older, free of their rules, but she bulldozed him, a robot with no soul. He saw her in some cubicle, smug over coffee, blind to his widow's pension. His $28,000 impossibility. Send proof, she snapped, then hung up, leaving him with a dead line and a racing heart. He slammed the phone down, the crack echoing, and cursed. Why wouldn't they hear him? What if they took it all? Mary's kitchen, the kids' inheritance. Rage and fear churned, bitter as old whiskey. He grabbed a pad, scribbling every word of that call, pen digging deep. The lesson crashed in. Phone promises fade like smoke. Only writing holds weight. Advice. Jot it all time, name, threats, or record it if you can, then demand email. Paper's your proof when they twist the truth. Tom couldn't stand the silence by Thursday. The walls closing in with betrayal. He pulled on his jacket and knocked on doors. Jenkins, Carter, Pete, folks he'd known forever. But Jenkins shrugged. Not my problem, Carter mumbled. Pay it, don't fight, and Pete dodged his gaze. They'll win anyway. Tom's boots dragged home. Their apathy a knife twist after years of shared beers and waves. He'd buried Mary alone, but this loneliness cut deeper. Didn't right matter anymore? He sank onto the couch, staring at her empty chair, the quiet suffocating. Then a stubborn ember flared. He'd faced worse than this and won. He wouldn't bend just because they wouldn't stand. The lesson dug in. Don't wait for a crowd, because sometimes you're the lone wolf who has to howl. Advice. Brace for the cold, but knock anyway, someone might listen later. Keep your spine, even when they turn away. Friday, Tom climbed to the attic, dust choking the air as he tore into boxes untouched since Mary's death. Old bills, cards, a cracked vase. Then gold. A 1977 deed and plat map. His lot free of the HOA's grasp. His heart raced as he traced the lines, Mary's voice whispering. We did it right, Tommy. Tears pricked, not sad, but alive with hope. These papers were his fight, his proof. He clutched them, the attic glowing with possibility, a grin breaking through. The HOA's smugness didn't know what was coming. He'd bury them with their own history. The lesson rooted deep. Old junk can be your savior. The past fights when you can't. Advice: don't toss records, store them safe. No luck. Hit the county clerk. They've got your back for free. By Saturday, Tom's small victory with the attic find was overshadowed by a new gut punch. A second letter slid under his door, this one bolder, uglier, threatening a lien on his home if he didn't pay the $28,000 by month's end. His breath caught as he read the words, picturing a legal noose tightening around the equity he'd scraped together over decades, the inheritance he'd promised his kids, the grandkids' college fund, the last piece of Mary he could still touch. He sank into his worn armchair, the crackle of the paper in his hands sounding like a countdown to ruin. A lien. That could mean losing the porch where little Ellie toddled her first steps, the kitchen where he still smelled Mary's apple pies on quiet nights. His chest heaved with a mix of dread and fury. How dare they dangle his life's work over his head like a cheap threat? He'd heard of liens before, back when a buddy lost his shop to the bank, but this felt personal, a knife aimed at his heart. The HOA didn't care about his story, his sweat, his solitude. They just wanted their pound of flesh. He paced the living room, boots thudding against the hardwood, and swore he'd fight tooth and nail before letting them stain his home with their greed. The lesson slammed into him like a winter gust. Know what a lien really means, because it's not just a word, it's a weapon, and not every threat they throw sticks. Advice: don't just freak out. Google it, call a friend who's been through it, or find a free legal clinic. Knowledge stops panic from handing them the win. Sunday morning brought no peace. Just a restless itch Tom couldn't shake, a need to do something, anything to fight back. He wasn't rich enough for a fancy lawyer, not with his pension barely covering the bills, so he grabbed his thermos and headed to the county library, a squat brick building he hadn't stepped into since Mary dragged him to story hour with the kids. Inside, the air smelled of old books and quiet hope, and a gray-haired clerk named Doris spotted his lost look. "What's got you, hon?" she asked, her voice soft but sharp. Tom spilled it all, the letters, the lien, the deed, and she didn't blink, just led him to a computer and showed him how to pull up property records online, free as the day is long. His fingers fumbled on the keys, but there it was, digital proof his lot stood alone before the HOA's reign. Doris grinned like a co-conspirator, slipping him a pamphlet for a senior legal aid group while whispering, "You've got this, mister." Tom's throat thickened. For the first time in days, he wasn't alone. He left with a printout and a spark of something fierce, gratitude for a stranger who cared, and a plan to keep digging. The lesson wrapped around him like a warm coat. Libraries aren't just for kids or novels, they're a lifeline when the world's kicking you down. Advice: swallow your pride and hit the library. Ask for help, use their tools, take the freebies. It's your tax dollars at work, and it might just save your bacon. Monday rolled in with a chill, but Tom's blood ran hot as he drove to the Historical Society, a tiny office tucked behind the post office where old-timers hoarded the town's secrets. He'd woken with a hunch. Somewhere in the past, there had to be more than just his deed to back him up. The volunteer, a wiry guy named Hal with a tobacco-stained beard, raised an eyebrow at Tom's story but hauled out a box of brittle newspapers anyway. They dug through decades, dust tickling Tom's nose, until Hal let out a low whistle. There, in a 1982 edition of the Gazette, was a grainy photo of the developer shaking hands with the mayor, promising Tom's lot would stay independent, free of association ties. Tom's hands shook as he held the clipping, Mary's voice echoing in his head. "We're the lucky ones, Tommy." It was like she'd left him a gift from beyond, a weapon wrapped in newsprint. He thanked Hal with a clap on the shoulder, framing that article in his mind like a trophy, proof the past could punch back. The HO could squawk all they wanted. This was his trump card and he'd play it hard. The lesson sank into his marrow. History's not just stories, it's ammo, and local archives can load your gun when the fight gets dirty. Advice: hunt down the old stuff, newspapers, town minutes, anything. Hit up your historical society or even the newspaper office. They've got the goods, and they love a good underdog tale. Tuesday buzzed with a different energy. Tom caught wind of it at the diner over a $2 coffee that tasted like tar. He'd gone for a breather, needing the hum of voices to drown out his worries, when he overheard whispers at the next booth. "Heard Tom's taking on the HOA," one guy muttered, fork scraping his plate. "Yeah, they've been jacking up my fees too. Maybe he's onto something," another grumbled. Tom kept his head down, but his ears burned as the chatter spread. Neighbors he'd thought were spineless swapping their own gripes about surprise fines, rigged votes, yards measured with rulers. By the time he paid his tab, the waitress winked and said, "You're stirring the pot, Wheeler, good for you." He walked out into the dusk, a grin tugging at his lips for the first time in weeks. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He'd cracked open a dam, and the trickle of discontent was turning into a flood. Loneliness faded, replaced by a gritty pride. He'd lit a match in a room full of kindling. The lesson hit him square in the chest. Share your battle, because even the quiet ones are watching, waiting for someone to break the silence. Advice: don't hide your fight. Talk it up at the store, the bar, the church pew. People won't always join you, but they'll start thinking, and that's the first crack in the wall. Wednesday night, Tom's kitchen table was a war room. Deed, plat map, newspaper clippings spread out like battle plans. He'd gotten a call from the HOA demanding he attend their next board meeting, a summons dripping with arrogance. So he went, heart pounding, papers stuffed in a folder Mary had once used for recipes. The boardroom smelled of stale coffee and smugness, 5 suits staring him down like he was a bug to squash. But Tom didn't flinch. He laid out his evidence slow and steady, voice rough but unshaken, watching their eyes dart as he dropped the deed, the map, the article. "My lot's not yours, never was," he said, pointing to the proof. The chairwoman's lips thinned, the guy in the tie shifted like he'd sat on a tack, but no one argued, not out loud. They mumbled about reviewing it, dismissed him with a wave, and offered no sorry, no backtrack, just a tight-jawed silence. Tom walked out, head high, feeling the weight lift off his shoulders like a shed coat. Victory tasted quiet, not sweet, but it was his. He'd faced the dragon and walked away with his home intact, Mary's spirit nodding somewhere in the ether. The lesson burned bright. Facts don't need volume, they just need to be true, and evidence shuts mouths faster than shouting. Advice: prep like it's war. Bring every scrap you've got, stay calm, and let the paper do the talking. They can't argue with what's real, even if they hate admitting it. Thursday morning dawned gray and heavy, but Tom felt a fire in his belly as he sat at his old typewriter, the one Mary used to peck out Christmas letters. The HO had slunk back into their hole after the board meeting. No lean, no more threats. Just silence, but Tom wasn't done. He typed up his fight step by step. The certified letter that nearly broke him, the attic treasure, the library lifeline, the diner whispers, every gritty detail of how he'd clawed his way to victory. His fingers ached, but his heart thumped with purpose. He wasn't just saving his house anymore. He was arming his neighbors. He printed copies on the ancient Xerox at the gas station, the hum of the machine a battle hymn, and slipped them into every mailbox on the street. By dusk, Mrs. Carter knocked on his door, eyes misty, clutching the guide like a lifeline. "I've been overcharged for years, thank you, Tom," she whispered, voice cracking. He nodded, throat tight, feeling Mary's pride in the air. He'd turned his scars into a shield for others, a map through the mess he'd escaped. The lesson sank deep. Don't hoard your wins, because sharing what you've learned can pull someone else out of the dark. Advice: write it down, your story, your tricks, your proof, and pass it out like ammo. You don't need a fancy printer or big words. Just give folks the tools and watch them rise. Friday night, Tom lay awake, the house creaking around him like an old friend settling in. Sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept spinning, replaying the past week's chaos. What if he'd caved? What if he'd forked over $28,000 out of fear, handed the HO his savings, his equity, his piece of Mary, just because their letters looked scary? He pictured himself broke, bitter, staring at these walls with nothing left but regret, the porch swing sold off to some stranger. His stomach churned at the thought. How close he'd come to folding, how easy it would have been to let panic call the shots. But he hadn't. He'd breathed deep, dug in, fought back, and now he was still here, still whole. A slow smile cracked his weathered face as he stared at the ceiling, gratitude washing over him like a warm tide. He'd kept their dream alive, not just for him, but for the kids, the grand Libby kids who'd inherit this place someday. The lesson hit him like a thunderclap. Fear's a liar that'll rob you blind if you let it, so don't jump until you've checked the ground. Advice. When the pressure's on, step back. Pour a drink, walk the yard, talk it out with someone you trust. Give yourself time to think because rash moves are how they win. Saturday brought a buzz to the neighborhood. A hum Tom hadn't felt since the 4th of July picnics Mary used to host. He heard it first at the hardware store. Folks muttering about the HOA, clutching his guide like a manifesto. By afternoon, a knot of neighbors gathered at the community center, voices sharp, demanding an audit of the HOA's books, transparency on fees, even a new election. Old man Jenkins, who'd brushed Tom off days ago, was there, barking about a $500 fine he'd paid for nothing. Tom stayed back, leaning on his truck, watching the spark he'd lit turn into a blaze. He hadn't meant to start a revolution, just to save his own skin, but here it was, a ripple he'd never imagined. Pride swelled in his chest, tinged with disbelief. One stubborn widower had shaken the tree, and now the apples were falling. He thought of Mary's laugh, how she'd have loved this chaos, and felt her nudge him forward. The lesson burned bright. One fight can wake a whole damn town, because courage isn't just loud, it's catching. Advice. Don't stop at your own win. Show up, speak up, back the others when they take the baton. You've got more pull than you know, so use it. Sunday evening, Tom sat on his porch, the air cool and thick with the scent of cut grass. He cradled a chipped mug of coffee, the HOA's shadow gone, the lean thread a ghost that never materialized. No trumpets blared, no one toasted his name, just the crickets chirping and the stars winking down, same as always. But the quiet was different now, heavy with a peace he'd earned, not borrowed. He ran his thumb along the mug's edge, remembering the nights he'd sat here with Mary, planning a life that'd outlast them both. The fight had been ugly, sleepless, sweaty, soul-draining, but this moment, this stillness, made it worth every second. He'd kept their home, their haven, and no one could take that away, not now, not ever. A soft breeze rustled the oaks, and he lifted his mug to it, a silent salute to the stubbornness that saw him through. The lesson settled in his bones. Peace isn't free, but it's worth every bruise you take to claim it. Advice. Savor the calm when it comes. Sit with it, taste it, let it heal you. And when the next bully knocks, remember how good it feels to stand your ground. Monday morning, Tom pulled the family Bible from the shelf, its leather worn from years of Mary's hands flipping pages. He'd beaten the HO, but he wasn't done leaving his mark. This was for the kids, for Ellie and Jake, for the grandkids who'd run these halls someday. He grabbed a pen and a sheet of lined paper, scribbling a letter in his rough scrawl. This house is yours because I fought for it. Never let anyone take what's yours just because they've got a loud voice or a fancy letterhead. Know your rights, stand your ground, and don't blink. He folded it neat, tucked it into the Book of Psalms, Mary's favorite, and slid the Bible back, a quiet vow to the future. He pictured Ellie reading it someday, her kids beside her, and felt a lump rise in his throat. This wasn't just about a house, it was about grit, about legacy, about giving them something stronger than brick and mortar. The lesson carved itself into his soul. Pass on more than stuff, pass on the fight, because wisdom's the real inheritance. Advice. Write your battles down. Here's the continuation of the script to complete the last sentence, and ensure the paragraph meets the character requirement. Monday morning, Tom pulled the family Bible from the shelf, its leather worn from years of Mary's hands flipping pages. He'd beaten the HO, but he wasn't done leaving his mark. This was for the kids, for Ellie and Jake, for the grandkids who'd run these halls someday. He grabbed a pen and a sheet of lined paper, scribbling a letter in his rough scrawl. This house is yours because I fought for it. Never let anyone take what's yours just because they've got a loud voice or a fancy letterhead. Know your rights, stand your ground, and don't blink. He folded it neat, tucked it into the Book of Psalms, Mary's favorite, and slid the Bible back, a quiet vow to the future. He pictured Ellie reading it someday, her kids beside her, and felt a lump rise in his throat. This wasn't just about a house, it was about grit, about legacy, about giving them something stronger than brick and mortar. The lesson carved itself into his soul. Pass on more than stuff, pass on the fight, because wisdom's the real inheritance. Advice. Write your battles. Your kids might not get it now, but one day they'll need that fire you forged. Leave them a roadmap, a piece of you that says, "We don't quit." It's not just a letter. It's a torch for the dark days ahead.